Welcome to the New York State Association of Counties orientation for newly elected and appointed county officials. This is module 1 of 5, county government structure in the state of New York. Today is January 6, 2021, January 6, 2022. And I am Stephen Aquario, the Executive Director of your New York State Association of Counties. Board of Directors, and our president is with us here today. I'd like to welcome you to county government. Some of you may be doing a return visit to county government or a return tour of duty, and congratulations on your returning to county government. For some of you, it might be your first venture into county government. Nonetheless, congratulations on your election and on your appointment. The Association of Counties welcomes you as a member to this great association, which has been in existence for nearly 100 years. The association's mission is to represent, it's to educate, it's to advocate for and serve New York's 57 counties, the 5 boroughs of the city of New York, and the thousands of elected and appointed county government officials who serve the public in all parts of this great state. As the voice of county leaders throughout the state, the association is steadfast in communicating the needs and recommendations of our county officials to the governor of this great state and to the state lawmakers. Local government is at the heart of New York State. County government is at the heart of New York State. And NYSAC is proud to represent the counties and their elected appointed officials throughout New York State. I'm here today with NYSAC's great president, the Honorable Marty Sauerbrei, the chair of the county of Tioga and the legislature of Tioga County. I'd like to turn it over to President Sauerbrei right now. Marty.
Well, thank you, Stephen, and welcome to all the new county officials. As Steve mentioned, in addition to being the NYSAC president, I'm also chairwoman of the Tioga County Legislature, and this is my 9th year, which I'm very proud of. As president of your association, it is my honor to represent you and your county colleagues from across the state. Our NYSAC members are some of the most innovative and committed and resilient local leaders that I know. Counties provide a range of programs and services that strengthen the quality of life for our communities. We maintain roads, preserve trails and parkland, inspect restaurants, patrol roads, prosecute crimes, protect vulnerable children, and care for those in need. And I encourage you to learn more about the many ways we keep New York State great. Today's training is the first in a series of 5 vital webinars to help you orient to county government and the key pillars of this structure. For some of you, this is brand new information, and for others, it serves as a refresher to the intricacies of county, state, and federal relationships. We hope that you find the following training useful, and we wish you much success in your tenure. In my 17 years serving Tioga County, I really have found great fulfillment in serving and providing and advocating for counties. I hope that you will find during your tenure that this will be a highlight of your career in government. And now I'll hand it back to Stephen for some final announcements before we begin.
Thank you, President Sauerbrei. It really is a great time to come into government. There's lots of opportunities, there's lots of networking to happen. Working through the Association of Counties, you can meet wonderful people like Marty from across this great state, from Long Island to the Southern Tier, to Western New York and North Country, to Central New York, the Mohawk Valley, the Capital District, down through the Hudson Valley. There's wonderful people all throughout this great state, and we encourage you to take advantage of those contacts by working through the Association of Counties, attending the virtual events that we have to offer, including this newly elected training, but also our in-person conferences. Again, thank you for participating in this training today and for participating in the New York State Association of Counties. Please note that we have 4 more trainings every Thursday through February 3rd that you could participate in on other vital topics for your orientation to county government. Please visit NYSAC website at www.nysac.org/webinars for more details to register. We hope that you'll find today's training thorough and insightful as you begin your commitment to county government and enjoy this program. I'll now turn it over to Jeanette Stanziano, the Director of Education and Training for NYSAC. Jeanette.
Thank you, Stephen. Welcome, everyone. Just a couple of housekeeping measures before we begin. We will be recording this program and posting the recording and a copy of the slides in PDF form on the NYSAC website later today. We do ask you, if you have questions during the presentation, to please go to your dashboard, click on the questions tab, and type in your question at any time. We will have a brief Q&A live at the end of the program to go over all questions. And now we begin the program. I'll be turning this over to Pat Cummings in just a moment. I would like to introduce your presenter for today. Patrick Cummings is NYSAC's counsel. I've had the pleasure of working with Pat for the past 10 years at NYSAC. Before he came on board with the NYSAC staff, Pat worked as an assistant county attorney in Schenectady County. He's an alum of Albany Law School, and he is a valued part of the NYSAC staff. I'd like to yield the floor now to Patrick to begin the presentation. Pat, the floor is yours.
Thanks much, Jeanette. As Jeanette mentioned, I'm Patrick Cummings. I'm counsel with NYSAC. We'll cover a lot of basics and some, we're going to cover a lot of material, and you might have some questions during this. Please feel free to reach out, as Jeanette said, during the presentation. Also, if you have questions after, please reach out to us at NYSAC at any time. You can, I work today, I'm working from home. I'll give you my cell phone number right now. That's 518-698-6682, 518-698-6682. Call me if you ever have any questions about county organizations, county structures, or any kind of local law questions. I'm here to what we do and what I can provide for you with that service as being a member. So thank you so much for being members with us and joining us this morning. This presentation is called Foundations of County Government. So what do we mean by that? This is, as I said before, a broad overview of how New York County started and the state laws that govern and impact our New York County structure. Additionally, we're going to discuss the different forms of county government throughout the state and why each are set up that way. We've got 62 counties, 57 outside New York City. Each is a little unique and different, and that gets confusing. But there's a reason why. First, there's the ability to do this, and there's a reason why each is different to address the different needs and structures and demographics of each of their locations. Next, Jeanette. So let's start from the beginning. Let's go way back. Today we have 62 counties, but how did we get here? In 1665, New York's lands were divided into separate regions because the British powers sought to set law and control of the lands. The Duke's Law of 1665 created judicial districts, and later in 1683, the General Assembly of Freeholders, convened by Governor Dongan, passed the Charter of Liberties and Privileges. This created 12 counties and how they should be governed. This is actually hanging at NYSAC. That's Tom Clingan, who the picture you see in front of you. Tom Clingan was the county clerk of Albany County, had an original copy of the Dongan laws within their files, and they gave us a copy. It's pretty amazing to see. But that right in front of you laid out how the first 12 counties, the borders, and the basic structure of how they can be governed. Next. With these 12 counties, you can already see the basic structure. Each county had, they created at this time a sheriff to enforce the law. Sheriffs could also levy and collect taxes if needed be. Additionally, each county created a legislative body. At this time, they were freeholders that through the king's authority, they could create law. So much like, and we're going to talk about this later, we've got services such as police and safety protection already formed here that we carry forward today. But you already have a body of legislators that can control the boundaries of that county. And again, flash forward to today, we'll see that the similar structure. Next slide. So in 1777, a year after the Declaration of Independence, New York State ratified its first state constitution that recognized under its authority 12 separate counties. Actually, I'm sorry. Go one more, Jeanette. So this actually created 14 counties. I apologize, in the original state constitution. This also created our cities and towns within our county. Next slide. So what is the state constitution? We talk about it often, but what is it actually? It's a legal document. It's a legal authority that established the structure of New York State government. It lays out the basic rights of the citizens of New York. It's really similar to the U.S. Constitution, right? The federal Constitution. The difference being, obviously, it's controlling New York State. And this New York State Constitution, if you ever get a chance or already get a chance to read it, it's more detailed than the federal Constitution. But it's because it was created about the same time. A lot of the same principles and a lot of the same ideas are throughout, and its structure is actually pretty similar. Much like the federal Constitution, it is difficult to amend, and that's the important takeaway I think I want you to have today, is the difference when we're talking about this section, the difference between original authority with the state constitution versus we're going to talk about state law later. They're almost, the state constitution is like a super law. It's much more difficult to amend and change than just by way of state legislative law. And this is going to be important for what we can and can't do within our counties, but this is also going to be important to show that the state would have difficult unilaterally, state legislature, taking away certain powers that were given to us by the state constitution. So how can the state constitution be amended? Two ways. There's one way is what's called the Constitutional Convention. This is a question that comes up to the people in way of a referendum every 20 years, asking, do they want to open up, or do the people of New York want to open up the Constitution for certain changes? And if it's a majority vote says yes, we have a Constitutional Convention. This has not happened in quite some time. And part of the reason is it's not necessarily an open question. It's like we talked about, it's detailed, and there's a lot in the state constitution. So sometimes the answer is no, because the people don't, maybe they want to change one part but not another. And the way the system works, the state legislature can put parameters on what we're going to open this up to within the convention to look at. And depending on what parameters they're putting in place is going to depend on the outcome of that vote. So while that one is rare, right, to happen, a more traditional form of amendment to the state constitution requires the state legislature to pass in two separate consecutive sessions the same piece of state legislation, same bill twice. They got to pass that by a majority vote. If they do so and state that this is an act that we're looking to change and ratify or add to the New York State Constitution, then it goes out to a vote of the people in the next upcoming November election to see if we're going to change the Constitution. We just saw this with 6 different issues that were passed in 2 consecutive legislative sessions, a lot dealing with election reform. The question that it was passed both by the state Senate and the state Assembly twice to, for example, pass no excuse absentee voting, right? Mail-in voting, to put that within the Constitution. Currently, due to the way the Constitution is written with election law, can only do absentee voting in pretty rare circumstances. You need to have actual proof that you'd be out of your county, out of the area, for a valid reason, that you wouldn't be able to make it on election day, or you need to be able to prove illness to a point or disability to a point that you can't make it to the polls. So we were looking, there was a proposal to change that, to strike that out of the state constitution and put in that to be able to, for any reason, to vote via mail. That failed by the people, right? So that that provision was voted down. I think 60% of the people voted to say no, we do not want that change made. And so what does that mean? It means that the Constitution remains. It also means that, as is on that area, it also means that if the legislature wants to pass this again, they need to do it again this session, and then again the following year after that, before they can put that back on the vote. Next. So the Constitution has 20 different articles within it. It's just the way it's organized, right? And it's almost like chapters in a book. And within the articles that you'll want to look at understanding county government is one, the Bill of Rights, and which lays out very similar to the United States Bill of Rights. And then more directly for us, there's something called Article 9 for local governments. And this provides, and under Article 9, there's a lot of protections and structure set up of powers, which is even called the local government Bill of Rights. And they're laid out here before you on the slide. So this isn't just law again, this is constitutional law. And so we're going to talk about the separation between the state and local government powers in a minute, but these are solid in constitutional law protections that you get to keep as a county official, whether or not the state legislature wants to change this or not. They wouldn't have the power to unilaterally stop this. Every local government shall have an elected legislative body. So all 57, all 62 counties, including New York City, they have it. That's why you have, it's within the state constitution, a legislative body that gets to create and enact laws and resolutions. No local government can be annexed without approval of the voters. So your borders are your borders. That's within state law. They cannot be taken away from you. You cannot be your governments, your towns, your cities, your counties, they cannot just be wiped off the map unless there's a mechanism for this. But there needs to be, the local governments need to approve, and then it needs to go to the voters by way of referendum that live in those areas to approve. The power to apportion costs for government service with, and this is the important part of this, with authorization of the legislature. So you have the power to tax, right? You have the power, and we do so with real property taxes, we do with sales taxes. And so because we provide so many services. However, we do need that authorization by the legislature. You'll see this quite often with sales tax authority. Most of our counties, not all of them, can go up to about 4 cents per dollar with sales tax. If we ever want to go to 4 cents or higher, we need to do something called a home rule request. And that is, we need to go to the state legislature and say, you know, this county would like 4.5 cents, let's say, or that is, we need authorization from the state legislature to increase those taxes, right? And then request the legislature to authorize establishment of different forms of county government. We'll go through that later, but there's going to be ways that you can change your county structure through a charter. You can also do it through alternative government laws, and then also there's certain ways that you could do through home rule. Make a request to change your forms. Next slide, Jenna. All offices not in the Constitution are appointed or elected. This is a big one. Next one, having the power of eminent domain. You have the power to seize land if need be for, and there's parameters around this, of course, but for good reason. If you need even private land, it can be taken. Now you have to go through a due process. You need to pay the landowner, but that you do have power of eminent domain. Local governments can act jointly as authorized by the legislature. So you each have your own functions. You do not have to take, let's say if you're a county, you do not have to take a city's powers and functions if they can't just be thrown at you if one stops. But you can jointly do services together, especially when authorized by the legislature. We often are seeing something, if you're newly elected's on here, if you haven't heard this term, you're going to see it a lot. That's shared services and shared service incentives by the state. It's everything from snow plowing to even just together your towns and your counties to jail use, and if one county needs to use a pod or a jail from one to another, they can work together. You can have even computer and software purchases together. 911 services can act jointly with counties. We're seeing more EMT service joint work together with counties and towns. This is all under the general umbrella of your Bill of Rights for local governments. Next slide, Jenna. So this is another big takeaway I want you to have, though. So while there's a lot of protections from the state constitution, we want to let you also understand that it is the state that created counties. The state is sovereign. Counties are not. We do have protections within the Constitution and other laws, but ultimately, because they're sovereign powered, that with our authority stems in large part from the state and what they've granted with us, and within, and so therefore that's when you get the dreaded term, the unfunded mandates. It is often the state can tell us that they through legislative authority they want us to perform service X, and we fight at NYSAC in large part to make sure if they're doing that they're paying for that. We need help, we need support, we need funding. That's why the budget process is so important. But that's a big always back and forth of these services are needed. These are what are deemed good ideas by the state legislature, but then how are we going to get them done? Oftentimes it's county feet on the ground, county services that are doing these, and in large part they can tell us to do that, and in large part and often they can say that through sales tax, through property tax authority, that they are not going to fund these programs. It's on us to be aware of this, educate the state, and let them know why this could hurt other services and why this is not fair to local taxpayers, and that we need a better system to support all the services we do. But they can put, unfortunately, oftentimes unfunded mandates on us. And it's where we really are, again, we're independent. I don't want to make it sound like we are soldiers of the state. That said, we mirror the state in so many ways. If you start to look at ours, go down department by department, you have a state counterpart that has not oversight, they have influence on us, and so we have a local health department. We've also obviously worked with them, and they did such a tremendous job and still doing such a tremendous job throughout COVID. Their counterpart is the state DOH, right? We have DSS, that we run the state Medicaid programs. There's multiple state offices that interact and put regulations on how we're going to run our DSS programs. We have veteran offices, local veteran offices that work with both the federal and state offices. Real property tax deals with state ORPs all the time. It's the state has again, more of a management, I guess, for lack of a better term, kind of office that comes up with ideas and regulations, and we have the counterparts of the counties in large part on, and how are we going to get this done? So it's this back and forth with that. Now, it's not I don't want to make it sound like it's a boss-employee relationship. There are within reason, they can tell us what we can and can't do. And one of the big things that, and we'll get to later in this, is we get to set up our own structure and in large part how we do these services and how we're going to function that. But then also I do want to point out, a lot of these mandates are state, both constitutional, if we go back to it, and federal constitutional obligations, and they can't force us, arguably, to do those without at least some kind of compensation or help and support to do so. So let's look at something like indigent defense services, right? It is a federal constitutional requirement that states provide counsel to those that are charged with crimes and can't afford counsel for themselves. The state, through legislation, put that on counties to perform in a public defender's office. You all have a public defender's office. If you don't have a public defender's office, you'll have something called an 18B office that can handle that, those functions. Over the years, we got less and less and less funding till we actually got sued in something called Royal Herring a few years back. And the suit was saying, hey, counties, you are not doing a good enough job in this federally constitutional requirement. We brought in the state in the suit, said maybe we are, maybe we're not. However, this is not our obligation. This is a state obligation. And ultimately, the court agreed with that the state needed, and the state who seemed to agree, and the court took the settlement. The state has funded indigent defense services to the tune of now $200 million more per year, in large part because the argument was, yes, they can tell us what to do, but if it's something that's supposed to be a state function, they should be at least giving us the tools to enact that. There's also in the Constitution, Article 9, Section 2, it prohibits the state from acting on property affairs or government of any local government unless the state passes a 2/3 supermajority vote to do so. What does that mean? It's a gray term. That's something, I don't want to get in the weeds on that, but if you ever get to that, can the state do that? Do we have Article 9 protection? Give me a call. Answer is the dreaded it depends. Next slide, Jeanette. Oh, and before I get to this, sorry, I said so much on that. I did want to point out too, we'll talk about county positions and structures later. There are some constitutional officers that are county positions that are protected, and again would take a state constitutional change to ever get rid of them or change their function or powers or duties. That is one being your county clerk, your sheriff, your district attorney. These are in other, especially the district attorney in other states, that's usually a state function. Even your district attorney's papers will be filed saying the people of New York State, and it wouldn't be Westchester County bringing these charges. It's the people of New York State, but these are county in the state constitution. These are county positions, elected county positions and would take a constitutional change to make it otherwise. In slide 12, this one, we're talking about the public employee pension system. So why do we put this in here? We want to make sure that you understand with all county officials, all county employees are within the pension system, and there's some constitutional protections, and there's also a lot of state law that deals with that. The state runs 4 different pension systems. The city of New York has its own. There's the state and local retirement system. There's the state, local police and fire, and there's the teachers retirement system. Most likely, most of you on this call and most of the people that work for your counties are going to be in bullet 2. You're going to be in the state and local retirement system. Through state law dependent, you'll be in one of those, one tier. I think tier 6 is the last tier that was changed, depending on when those start. But everyone is within the pension system, and there's constitutional protections that we'll talk about next slide, Jeanette, within the Constitution. What does this mean? This basically means once one is in, they're in. It's a earned benefit, a contractual relationship that can't be diminished, impaired, or taken away. So no legislative pen stroke can take one's pension away or pension rights away. It would take, again, an act, a constitutional vote. Now, this has happened recently, right? So there was in 2017 a constitutional amendment that passed. What passed? It allowed a judge, after a hearing, to reduce or revoke a pension to a public officer that is convicted, not charged, convicted of a felony that is related to his or her official duties. It's rare, but it can happen. And there's a mechanism for that. And I just wanted to kind of point out that there's protections of a pension, but there's ways that in certain fact patterns where it can be diminished now or impaired. Next slide. Okay, so we're getting out of the Constitution now. So that's your superpowers, right? And super hard to change and locked in. And so now there are, though, thousands and thousands and thousands of other state laws that are passed in a normal way. State legislature, Senate introduces, passes over to the Assembly, governor signs, becomes law. There are many of these that can impact your day-to-day life and function on a county level. And we just list a few here. I just want you to be aware of some laws that if you worked in a county attorney's office, you come across these often because, oh, this is under this section of law that impacts that. A big one, civil service law. This is a state law that deals with your labor issues, how you can hire, how you can fire. A big one within civil service law, there's different sections within it, is something called the Public Employees Fair Employment Act, aka the Taylor Law. What is that? And again, that's a lot with what Taylor Law is, but it allows the right to unionize within New York State. It allows the right to negotiate. It prohibits striking from certain jobs and unions. The other flip to that, though, that while it prohibits striking, your CBAs, your collective bargaining agreements that you have with your unions, they have to hold even if they run out. So let's say the terms of your union CBA, they go until 2020. Well, now in good faith, you need to negotiate and come to a new agreement. The old language, it stays until you come to a new agreement. That's all under the Taylor Law, and there's exceptions to that too, but again, just know that for now. Election law, huge section of law on how we can conduct elections, what those that are going for, when they need to set petitions, etc. But the counties run the elections on the most part. Some villages do some too, but I mean, it's a huge function that we do. It's all under New York State election law, really, how to do that. Eminent domain, we talked about you have the right, but then it talks about the process. How do you do it? There's actually a little section within New York State law called eminent domain. Highway law, well, we run tens of thousands of miles for construction and maintenance between our towns and our county functions, and there's something called highway law that helps understand restrictions and what you can and can't do there. Next slide. Public officers law. This is a huge one that you'll be turning back and forth from for your meetings that you have quite often, right? So your official oaths, how is that done? When is it going to be done? For elected officials and for officers. The filling of vacancies. Now, a lot of this we can change within, we'll talk about county charters in a minute, but you know, this is done. The state law has parameters on how this can be done if you don't have something in your charter on filling vacancies, and some stuff like constitutional officers, you can't fill those vacancies even if your charter says so. That's going to be typically a governor appointment if you lose a constitutional officer. FOIL for your documents is governed under this, and open meetings law. Ton of questions on open meetings, how to run those. These are all going to be found in public officers law. Retirement Social Security law applies to counties as well as the state. Local finance law, what kind of bonds, what kind of debt you can get into, and tax law. So you know, again, what we can and can't do for authorization of sales tax and use. Next slide. Here's three more, just real quick. You know, these are just functions for state law that we do often. DA's office deals with vehicle traffic all the time. Towns more and villages with volunteer firefighters, and then workers' comp law. Complex areas, but if there's different sections if you start to run into these issues. But I always just talk to your county attorney, please. But these are places in state law that will keep coming back to counties. Next slide. So the Consolidated Laws as a title is probably, I should probably change this one. But all those are Consolidated Laws. So what we mean by that is the ones before that is you know, whenever the state passes a law, they really just call it like the law of 2021. Excuse me, I'm gonna get a drink. Chapter 12. And then it needs to be, and it just does what the state law says it does. And then it needs to be later on consolidated into state law in different sections. Excuse me, I'm just gonna clear my throat. I'll push mute not to. There, much better. Anyway, so it just, all we're really saying by Consolidated Laws is it puts it in the chapters of that book of an organizational form, and so where you can find these after they're passed by the state. General municipal law is another big one just to know of, and that's you know, how the maintenance of reserve funds, how much you can do, how much you should be doing, your public bidding requirements, how you can purchase, what needs to go out to bid, big things there. IDAs, when you set them up, every county's got an IDA. The structure of them would be found under general municipal law. Next slide. So these are also consolidated laws, county law and municipal home rule law, but like those other ones are all, you know, tangentially you might find them when you're working on those issues. These two are really get to the heart of how we're set up, county law and municipal home rule law, as well as defining our powers within. Next slide. So the county law, it's called the county law, but this is a state law called the county law, right? Interesting enough, and we'll go to in 5 minutes to talk about this, does not have any provisions for an elected executive. So a lot of your counties will have a county executive form of government that's not within county law. Well, county law, it was set up and structured for when counties back in the day were all board of supervisors, and we'll talk about that in a second, what a board of supervisors is, but really a town form of government where you get elected and you become to a county structure. County law talks about the powers of the board of supervisors. their biggest power, they can create local law, they can create resolutions, they can pass budgets, they're going to oversee all the departments. It's a ton of power with the Board of Supervisors, and each under county law must elect a chair. That's why each county has, you've got your legislative board, or your Board of Supervisors, and then a chair that must be elected typically under county law every year. That can also be changed and tweaked as we'll talk about a little bit. But so county law also has really the powers and duties it lays out for a lot of positions and what they can and can't do. It talks not just about the board, it talks about the clerk of the board, the county attorneys in there, and the term and their function, the sheriff, your DA, your public defender. If you're looking for definitions and parameters and roles on each, it's going to be found for each of these different department heads. It's going to be found under state county law. Next slide, Jeanette. So while county law talks a lot about the structure, municipal home rule talks about the powers and the ability and how we're going to adopt and amend local laws. Your powers and duties of all different officers, it helps define those as well. The actual function on how to adopt your laws, your local laws, you got to get that right? You've got to put out notice to the people. You need to put out proper notice to each other legislator. That is going to be all governed under municipal home rule law and discussed how it's done there. Real quick, like a side tangent, I do get this question from time to time of what so local laws, you can really pass anything. It's a pretty strong power. However, couple caveats to that. You can't preempt the state constitution, the federal constitution, or state law that already speaks on a statewide issue. Other than that, you really have a lot of power to pass local laws. I mean, it was just, for example, you think of a lot of things that maybe are national or certainly statewide issues, like texting while driving. When I first started at NYSAC, it was legal in New York to text while driving. There were a lot of accidents, and it was counties that started passing no texting while driving in our county. This is they're putting liability on people and getting I think at that time cell phone companies did not like these local laws, and trying to say that we didn't have the right to do that. We did, and we passed these, and then the state sees they're good ideas and they end up adopting it statewide. So I mean, you do have a lot of power with that. You even have the power with local laws for criminal sanctions. It is only you cannot do with your local laws anything that would put someone in prison. So over a year, the harshest penalty you can have with any criminal sanction is 1 year or less. So there's parameters such as that. And quickly to a difference between a resolution and a local law is really just length of stay. I mean, local laws stay until another local law preempts it, or a state law preempts it. It just lasts forever. A resolution is supposed to be more short in time, such as your budget is passed by resolution. And so there's just different ways, and under municipal home rule law, they get introduced and passed. Next slide. So county charter law. This is the law that governs how we can create a charter. So what's a county charter? County charter is kind of like, not every county has one, but it's like our state constitution. It's a county constitution. It is a way that we can totally reorganize, and we can do a lot of different things with county charters. We can set up how a county functions. In large part, what we can do, this has to go to referendum. If you ever do a county charter, or you want to change how your charter runs, it needs to go to referendum of the people. Now, you can change anything you want, but you still, again, remember the state constitution, you have to provide for a legislative body. But this is where we get county executive form of government, quite often through charter law. because when you're starting to make large changes, when you're not just making a couple tweaks that you can do for local law or even ask for the state to make the change, you can make, if you need to go to referendum and make a whole cloth, we're going to adopt this whole thing, that can be preferred. When you are creating or getting rid of powers and duties of an elected official or multiple ones, it needs to go to referendum anyway. Law, and it has so many domino effects that you might consider going to a charter at this point and just changing it all there, because it has to go to referendum anyway. Putting it out, Montgomery County did this relatively recently, and created the county executive form of government. Next slide. Talked about some of this. Now the already that the first, it starts with the resolution from the legislative body, but it can also be done by petition of voters. The voters can force this question to the legislative body. Now, if you'd like a charter, the charter may be drafted by the legislative body, or you can get a committee, and a charter commission is often appointed for the purpose of drafting this to still look independent, but they should, you can create who should be on that charter commission. As we talked about before, once you establish and it gets adopted, any repeal or amendment, all of those are subject to referendum. So that's why I said this is analogous to the state constitution. It's hard once you. Sometimes it is advantageous to do a charter because you can make a lot of changes all at once, but once you're in, you're pretty locked in. It's to make substantial changes, it takes a bit. Next slide. So let's go into county organization. As you see here, 23 counties have adopted a county charter form with elected executives. Montgomery, as we just talked about, did in 2012, Ulster in 2009. So what is an executive kind of government? It's really very similar to the way the state's set up. You've got your county legislature with this form of government. They can pass local laws and resolutions. But now with an executive, it's an elected position. They get also a crack at the local laws. Now you're going much like the state has to go to the governor. They can veto those local laws. It's another step of government. They're also the executive, much like the governor is, and they're in charge of the different agencies, not elected agencies, not the sheriff, but they have oversight over the other executives branches, your real property tax director, your finance office, things like of that nature. It's going to be under the county attorney's office, under the county executive's purview. 16 of our counties still have the board of supervisors structure. So that is it's a two-hat type of government system. You've got your town, so look at like Saratoga. Your town, one runs for in Clifton Park. They run to become the supervisor of Clifton Park. Automatically, when they win that election, they get on the county's board of supervisors. So while they have a town function, they also sit on the board of supervisors that has all the same powers of a county legislature, and the parameters within that board of supervisors are going to be the town line itself, and we'll talk later. It's still going to be one person, one vote. But now 40 counties, through whether it be charter, alternate form of government, they have elected to have a county legislature separate from your board of supervisor structure. So now these are district lines that are drawn, and they don't function, they have a separate function from the town, and while often they'll be working together, separately elected officials, same area, potentially, districts can go over the town lines, and they're separately elected. Some of these forms are going to also have Executives, some won't. You're going to have just a chair. Board of Supervisors is going to have a chair. Some county legislatures, they're all going to have a chair. But some, that's where the buck stops with the local laws. It gets introduced, passed to the floor by the chair, passed by the body, and becomes law. Then there's one county with a board of representatives. Next slide, Jeanette. So what's in the name? Legislator, and we talked about some of this. The supervisors, you're there as the town. Here's the important thing on this is the last bullet point. So if I'm elected I'm in Niskayuna right now, and although they've got a different form, but let's assume it's a board of supervisors in the town of Niskayuna, it has, when I have my county function, it's under federal law. Your vote has to be weighted by share of county population. So what does that mean? One person, one vote. So if I live in a town of 50,000 and the town next to me has 100,000, that on a county level, that supervisor to the right of me should have twice the voting power that I have. Now, every 10 years of the census, we need to readjust this accordingly, and we are at that time right now. So you might be seeing some of that in the near future, depending on the plus minus of where your county went. Next slide. A legislator has the same function as your board of supervisors. You also have but you're not elected on a town level, right? You're elected through your districts within your county. You also have a one person, one vote requirement, and that's based on the drawn lines of the district. And now, once those are established, though, you can have weighted vote as well. So it can be lines of a legislature, and then the population shifts, and where it was even before, now it's not. You can either move those district lines, or you can make a hybrid system now of to have a weighted vote within those districts as well. Next slide. These show how they're all, again, same, very similar functions, just a different structure. They all serve the legislative body of the county. They all allow to enact and repeal local laws. They can levy taxes and oversee and have control of the budget process, which is huge. And those without a county executive form of government, they also have direct oversight to the county employees and how they function. Next. So the county executives, we talked a lot about this already, so we can go through this quickly. They're going to be the chief budget officer of the county. This is, again, think of like the governor of the county. You can veto the actions of the legislature. This is going to be made usually with a charter form of government. And there's different reasons why a county may or may not want a county executive. Some counties are small enough that they feel, our chair, we've got enough face-to-face with the public, with our chair, with our local representatives. It's usually the larger counties, on the most part, that do a county executive form of government. Just so that when it's such a large population, there's a face to that county, that kind of a buck stops here sort of thing, an elected official, where both whether it be the state representatives can go to the press, the people know that this is who represents our county on some of these matters, and it can have a more organized feel to it when a county starts getting larger. Next. There are a lot of your counties, 22 have a county administrator, 11 have county managers. These are basically the same. The county manager, county administrator, kind of similar function, different name. You can create these through charter. You can also just do this by local law. So what are they? I mean, I said earlier that the legislature, the non-county executive legislators and board of supervisors, you have that function of the day-to-day responsibilities of each of your departments. Your department of everything we talked about before, Department of Health, your real property tax director office, your veterans. This can become a lot to manage, especially the day-to-day operations for a legislature or a chair. A lot of counties have elected to create these positions and delegate some of that power. That's why you can create a county legislator or county administrator through power of local law. You don't need a referendum for this because they're not elected officials, and they're not taking those powers. You're delegating these powers to them. They work for you on behalf of the county. Next. So just talked a lot about this, and one of their biggest, they have a ton of functions, but and really with personnel and day-to-day operations, biggest thing is, in this time of year, they prepare the budget. They're your budget operators, and they submit it to, they do proposals to you at the legislative body for adoption, and they do the budget for everything. So although I said before, the elected officials can be on their own, like the sheriffs run their own department, the legislative body still submits their budget, and it's usually the manager or the admin that plays a huge role in that, making sure the budget functions. Next. Legislative administration. So this is ones that have not adopted a county manager. These are usually your smaller counties, right? That you have, if you only have a few hundred county employees, and the chair or they get to know each department head, they understand their needs, they can go straight to the chair and straight to the legislature. And then you let those department heads themselves run each department while going to the chair and communicating their needs and what they'll need to do for those services. A strong committee system is usually established with this. So you'll have subcommittees that deal with the Department of Health within your legislature that talks to them more regularly, more frequently, because when you have this kind of system, your legislature's not there every day, right? They're all part-time positions, and so you only meet once or twice a month. You want to make sure that you might have subcommittees that are focusing, and they can help out that local health department on a quick call or need be. Next. Changing our big thing we talked about, so we'll go quickly again. We all have the power to change how we do any of the ones we just talked about. You can make your county one of any of those forms, and even go back if you think you made a mistake, right, and go to a different form of county government. Ultimately, you need to provide these services. How you form your structure to do so are come with how we talked about before. And a lot you can do by local law, some you can do by creating a charter. The one thing we cannot do is we cannot, by local law, we cannot abolish or diminish the powers of an elected official without a referendum of the people. So what does that mean? It means a lot, but again, let's call me if we get those questions. Does that mean, so for a sheriff, let's say, I would argue one could not, just by local law, and maybe even more because they're constitutionally protected, you couldn't say you've lost your policing powers, right? Like you can't, they're their own elected officials. They have their own powers and duties. That would be a diminishing their power if one tried to unilaterally pass something like that. But could they unilaterally change? Is a salary a power? Is the term of office, right? We always get that question. It's a 4-year window. Could we make it a 3? There's different things you may or may not do that might run into. Is this diminishing their power or not? And can we do this by local law, or does this need to go to referendum? We covered a lot, but and a lot of broad stuff. So you might not have specific questions, but if you think of anything in these worlds that we covered, we can get much more detailed, and just reach out to us anytime. And I hope that was at least a helpful overview of places to go and general thoughts of how a county government's structured and formed.
Thank you, Pat. We have another couple of very brief presentations. Pat, I'm going to throw it back to you to cover the legislative priorities list. Okay, I think Pat may be having an issue with his audio. Tom, are you on the line right now?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
I sure can. So I'm going to right now go to Tom Oldfather, who is NYSAC's extraordinarily prolific communications manager for NYSAC. Tom's going to tell you a bit about the different ways that you can stay connected to NYSAC and the way that you can stay on top of state and federal news about counties. Tom, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Jeanette. And thank you all for taking part in this incredibly informative training and for giving me an opportunity to plug the work of the NYSAC communications team. Our goal is to provide you with the latest news and analysis that will help you do your job and help the association to advocate on your behalf. And so to accomplish this, we have a few main tools that I want to touch on and encourage you to keep an eye out for and engage with. Our website, our blast emails, our social media, our County Conversations podcast, and then our NYSAC News magazine. So I'll start with the website. It's pretty straightforward. It's the front door to our association. It's a great place to start to get information about our legislative advocacy, upcoming training opportunities, as well as some of the member benefits and partnerships that we have. So there's, most of these things that I'll talk about later on, or in the next minute or so here, you can find on the website. And it's got everything. Next is our blast emails. These are really important. So every Monday through Friday, so every day of the work week, we send a news roundup called Counties in the News. We collect county stories from every region of the state, as well as pertinent state and national news, and then also some of the recent goings on in NYSAC, and we send this out to you every morning, usually around 10:30 or 11, depending on how many stories we have to sift through. So it's a great place to see what's going on in your region and other regions with an eye specifically towards county news. The next is the county perspective. Now this goes out once a week during the legislative session, so January through June, and occasionally outside the legislative session. And it's like a newsletter. And there we provide a deeper analysis of the most important topics from the week, including updates from Albany and DC, as well as special reports, information on emerging issues, grants, training opportunities. It's a really great way to get a snapshot of what's happened, in a week in Albany and DC. And there'll be one of those actually going out later today, so keep an eye out for that. You'll also receive periodic emails from NYSAC, including action alerts, which is what we send when we're trying to mobilize our members in support or opposition to a piece of legislation. And then occasionally other, special announcements about, reports that we've published or anything else that we feel like we really need to push out to our members. So this email list is a critical link to you. And it's our best way to connect with all the incredible resources that we create here. So if you haven't signed up yet, please sign up for our blast emails by going to nysac.org/news. That's nysac.org/news. And there you'll see a form where you can fill out your name and email address, and we can make sure that you get on the list for all this stuff. Next, we have our social media. We maintain a really robust social media presence. We're active on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can find us by searching @NYS Counties on all three of those. It's the same handle for all three, @NYS Counties. Twitter is our flagship platform where we engage with state lawmakers, the press, and other advocacy organizations. It's kind of the first place to look for like press releases and statements from us in response to breaking news, as well as other information about upcoming events and new initiatives. And then so then I'll move on to the podcast. I'm incredibly proud to say that we're one of the only municipal associations with a weekly podcast. It's called County Conversations. There's a new episode every Monday, and it features a wide range of content specific to counties and county leaders. We have interviews with county leaders, department heads about issues and initiatives, interviews with representatives from other municipal advocacy associations, as well as conversations with our expert staff about some of the things we're working on here. So it's a great way to go deeper on a lot of important issues. And like I said, it's a really special thing we do. We just published our 50th episode, and we've received over 3,000 downloads so far. So it's a great resource. There's several ways to listen. The best way is to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or the Podbean app, whatever your preferred podcast app is. If you have one, you just go to the app, search County Conversations, and you'll find us and you subscribe. That way you'll get all the new episodes delivered right to your phone every Monday. You can also listen on your computer by just going to nysac.org/podcast. That's nysac.org/podcast. You'll see a big list of all our recent episodes. You can scroll through and find episodes on issues that are interesting to you and listen to them. So I strongly encourage you to check it out and subscribe. And then, of course, if you have any ideas for a podcast, we're always looking for new ideas, or if you'd like to be on one, we'd love to hear that. So if you have ideas or are interested in being on a podcast, please reach out to our multimedia specialist, Kate Pierce, at kpierce, KPIERCE, at nysac.org. You can find her on our website under our staff listing. She's in charge of the podcast, and she'd be happy to work with you to set up a time to discuss something. Finally, we publish a magazine 3 times a year. We're currently working on our winter issue, which is typically our legislative guide issue, which is what this one will be. It's called NYSAC News. We also publish an issue around the spring and the fall, and those issues are generally focused on some new and ever-changing theme. Right before our winter issue, we did an issue all about climate change and the county response to transitioning to clean energy. Those will be automatically delivered to your mailbox to the address that we have on file. But you can also read them online anytime and dig through past issues by going to nysac.org/magazine. And there you'll see links to the online versions of the magazine. So we're still collecting submissions for that, for the winter legislative guide right now. If you're interested in submitting an article, you can reach out to me at toldfather@nysac.org. And also keep an eye out. We'll be sending some reminders for calls for articles where you can see some of the suggested topics and other information about submitting an article. So that's it for me. That's a quick rundown. We do a lot of stuff here at NYSAC. We're always looking for new ways to better serve our membership. So if you have any ideas or would like additional resources on a topic, don't hesitate to reach out to me or Deputy Director Mark Levine, and we'll be happy to work with you to see if we can find a way to incorporate your ideas into what we already do. So thank you, Jeanette, and thank you everybody for listening.
Thank you, Tom. I'm going to switch back to Pat now, who is going to give you a brief overview of NYSAC's legislative priorities and legislative activity. Pat.
Yeah, thanks, Jeanette. Thanks, Tom, before that. And thank you all again for joining. I know it was recording me before, so I didn't get a chance to say that to you, but thank you for especially the newly electeds to taking the time, getting to know NYSAC, getting to know, educate yourself on counties a little better, and hopefully we can help you with that. This was normally Ryan Gregoire, he's our legislative director, would be talking about our legislative priorities with you. He's actually, he's a busy guy. He's working, the state of the state happened yesterday from the governor, and I'll talk a little bit about that and why it's important, and he's gotten called into a meeting for that. So I'm happy to try and fill his shoes, but please, as Tom was mentioning, feel free to reach out to him for communication needs, any kind of legislative needs, any kind of, you want to know what's happening with state law, you need state law to be influenced in your favor, you need something for your county, reach out to Ryan. He's one of the hardest working guys I know, and he can do a ton for you and your county as far as educating and helping get laws through the legislature. So I'm going to talk quickly about what our NYSAC legislative priorities are this year. But first, what does that even mean? Why does NYSAC have legislative priorities, right? State legislative priorities. We do a lot of things at NYSAC for our members, but if we're going to boil down to 2 main functions, it's educate, what we're doing here to talk about current laws and systems and parameters by which you need to provide your residents services, and then we advocate, right? And that's ultimately, that's we advocate to the state to change those laws and systems to give you more flexibility to do a better job on the ground. And we can do that. We do have a lot of contacts with the state legislature. We work well with them. Kathy Hochul has been great. And if you saw the State of State yesterday, great for communication with us and reaching out to when they're looking to make changes locally, to keeping us in the loop and getting our ideas. So hopefully we can keep that partnership going. So we put out a legislative program that hopefully Jeanette or Tom, if you're listening, if you could put that link, if you could Google and find our legislative program, it's on our NYSAC website, and put that in the link for everyone to see. It's a 20-page document this year. It's our members themselves that lead us to what laws and systems do we need help and change with. You're going to largely see, I mean, it can come down to two things, what we try to do for our members mostly. One, get you more funding, or at least make the funding that you have locally more flexible, so that you can spend it how is the best needs for your residents, as opposed to being told how to spend it. Two, home rule authority, so how you're performing those systems and changes, and that's going to be the bulk of what we do. And so when you go through that 20-page document, keep that in mind of, what these are, you hear the term unfunded mandate from the state's requiring you to provide this service. So why are we pushing for this state bill? It's usually to either get more funding, so it's not an unfunded mandate, it's just a mandate, or we're looking to change the law so that either it doesn't have to be on the county level to perform that function because we're doing so many other things, or allowing us flexibility to do it in a different way, a way that makes more sense for your county. So it's an extensive list, but it's with 20 pages of ideas. We do break it down by category and by department almost within your county, but we have a top 5. I want to point out a couple of the top 5 that we're pushing for. Then you'll be hearing more about this throughout the year. One is to end county sales tax for state aid to municipalities. So when the state budget, after the governor puts out the state of the state, she will put out her state budget in a couple of weeks. One of those items within the state budget is going to be AIM funding. So how much funding goes to towns and cities to help with their services? A few years back, some of the sales tax that counties use to support your services got diverted, and we have to spend, I think it's over 70 million of that statewide to help towns and cities with the AIM funding that was traditionally a state function. We are pushing hard to get that reversed, so that you can keep your local sales tax dollars for your services without trying to take from the towns and the cities. We just feel like that should be a state cost as it was traditionally. Sunset on county sales tax diversion for distress health facilities. So this was one put in last year to try to help especially hospitals in the time of need with COVID. Again, this was a sales tax diversion coming from counties on normally state and federal aid. That state and federal aid's actually been there now for the hospitals, and we're hoping that at sunset that counties can turn their dollars back to where they'd like to prioritize those, which again might be your hospitals, but we want flexibility for you to do that. Make counties whole for federally enhanced Medicaid funds. Always a big battle between the state and counties on Medicaid share. A lot to this issue, but we do feel like the state has been withholding Medicaid funds that should be allocated to you. And then finally, invest more in local health departments. We don't need to go too far into why that's important. Clearly, we've lived the past 2 years and see why that's a need. We just need more support and help with that, and we're hoping the state understands that, and so that we can bolster up our health departments, because to help with COVID and every other health function. To get these priorities through. So if you get any thoughts on, boy, we need help here, we need the state law changed, contact us. Become a member of our committees within our conferences. They can help shape our platform on what we do, but just even just simple call and be like, we think this is a good idea. Can you push for this? We'll be happy to do that. So please take a look through our state legislative program. If you have any questions on any of it, call me, call Ryan anytime. But then also I want to leave time for Q&A for anything you heard today, whether it be from the Ledge program to what we discussed earlier about local government structure to times with communications.
Thank you, Pat. Pat, are you able to view the questions, or would you like me to read them to you?
Could you read them, Jeanette? I don't see them.
Sure
I
thing.
apologize.
So the first question is it constitutional to direct gallery attendees at a legislative meeting to a nearby closed circuit location away from the main chamber, while at the same time allowing for free speech of attendees at that location down the hall from the main chamber? Thank you.
So if I'm hearing this right, I might actually reread this and get back to you. But if I'm hearing right, can you? Is this? Maybe if I can open the question. Actually, I think I can open the questions. I think what they're asking is, during a legislative meeting, can one separate rooms out? It sounds like an open meetings question. I would
Yes.
definitely want to not just wing this answer. I'll look into it and get back to you. That said, I highly advise with all these kind of questions, open government meetings, whether what you can and can't say in committee, how long one is able to speak during session. Go to the Committee on Open Government is fantastic. It's a state-run group. They will take your call. Their phone number is listed right on their website, and they're really active, and they'll get back to you with an answer on these kind of questions and more relatively quickly. If it's more complex, you can put in a formal question and they'll give you a written answer. But without fully understanding the question, I want to make sure I'm getting it right. I would recommend you turn to the Committee on Open Government with the state, but I'll follow up with that to make sure I'm understanding it.
Pat, I also want to recommend to the person who asked the question that on January 27th at 10 a.m., we'll be running module 4 of this 5-part training. And there are 2 parts to that training. The first one is adopting local laws, but the second half is open government laws, which is being presented by the executive director of the New York State Committee on Open Government, Shoshana Bewley. So I would encourage you to register for the January 27th, 10 a.m. module, where you will hear a presentation from the director of the Committee on Open Government, and you will also be able to ask this question directly to the executive director, in addition to the options that Pat mentioned. Okay, the next question, are there any Board of Supervisor organizations still existing? Why would this wording remain unchanged for those counties that have county legislatures?
I don't think that those that have county legislatures still call themselves a Board of Supervisors. There's one that's called a Board of Representatives, and that's really it's to me in function a county legislature. They just call themselves representatives instead. But no, those that are Board of Supervisors, all that I can think of are they've got a town, some city, but mostly you're the town supervisor, and then you become on the Board of Supervisors, and that's why it's called that. And those that are county legislators from a district are typically called county legislatures.
Another question, is the position of county executive a local law?
No, that one's not. So now you're talking about, so unlike when I talked about the manager or admin, although they do have some similar functions, you're talking about creating a county-wide elected official that you're vesting elected powers to. And so when you're creating powers and duties in an elected official, I can't think of any exceptions, but I'll try to say 99 out of 100 times, including this time, it's got to go to a referendum. So it's not just a local law. The people need to adopt that. So any of the creations of county executives either can be done through a charter, which can be done through a referendum, or just individually creating one. But typically it's done through a charter because you're making so many wholesale changes at once through the structure that you're going to put a charter and have the county executive. So no, not just by local law, because you're creating or even taking away from the legislature in some ways a power or duty. So existing the existing elected officials, such as a legislator, they can't just pass a local law and then it gets enacted. They need to then give the power of veto to the county executive. So they arguably, and I think it's a good argument, they lose some power. So again, you can't just by local law create that. That needs to be approved by the people.
Great. I've got two questions that are very similar. Are counties required to redistrict based on the latest census? And also weighted votes need to be adjusted by census. Who does this, and how can we get this initiated for sooner rather than later?
So the answer is the dreaded it depends. It depends on what the plus minus was of your population shift. And I think many of your county planners that deal with the census are already looking at this. And then it's going to be a combination of county planners, county managers, county attorneys that are all going to be figuring that out. Ultimately, there's parameters under the law. I think it's general municipal law that talk about how the lines can be redrawn if you're redrawing lines, to make sure there's no bias when redrawing those lines. But ultimately, if it's it's not as simple as this rule, as I'm about to say, but it's a plus or minus 5% growth from your biggest to largest, largest to smallest county. Actually, it's by the mean, but it's plus or 5% change within certain districts in your county that would require you to then change to keep within the one person, one vote. And then again, you can go about that two ways. If you're a board of supervisor county, your district's already drawn by your town line, so you're not going to redraw those lines. It's just going to be done. You're going to do a weighted voting shift. If you're a legislature, you might want to move your lines themselves to be within one person, one vote. But to answer the latter question, it's going to usually start with your planners and your because they dealt with the census, then or your county admins, county attorneys are all looking at this and then would bring it to the legislature.
Great. We have one final question. Who's in charge of the New York State broadband program?
I don't know if it's this is definitely a question for Ryan. He deals with the broadband much more than that. I think it's real. I mean, this is such a global, massive issue. It's not even just anybody in the state. It's a federal issue. I know we work a lot with the second floor, so the governor's office themselves. There's so many moving pieces to this, including obviously the cell phone internet companies it's usually the governor's office themselves is who we're communicating with on issues of this kind of statewide magnitude and importance. But there's so many different entities that are involved, whether it's from public safety, 911 coordinators, all the way down to planners. Again, I mean, I can't think of an area in a county or state government this doesn't touch. But this is an issue like this is typically a governor's office issue. That said, if you're looking for a direct contact, that's perfect for call Ryan, shoot Ryan an email, Gregoire. You'll find his contact on our website, and he can get you some direct contacts to talk to help with that.
Great. I just want you, the person who submitted the question, to let you know that I will submit your question to Ryan directly on your behalf and have him contact you as well. Pat, I think that was the last question.
Great. Well, I wanted to definitely, well, let me add this on the questions too. If you have anything else that you think of later on, just email us, or when and if you're coming back to later programs, just send them in, and Jeanette will send those. She'll triage those to all of us. And I want to thank you all for joining this webinar. We'd like to remind everyone to join our 4 upcoming programs to continue their training and orientation every Thursday until February 3rd. We hope you enjoyed today's training. I'd also like to thank the generosity of our NYSAC Excelsior sponsors for underwriting this series. That concludes the webinar for today. Thank you, and have a healthy and productive week. Take care.